right? If you do that, a lot of those kind of fears are unfounded. But if you hire someone who's indeed, surfing and has had 5 jobs in 6 years, yeah, you're probably not finding someone who connects with companies a lot. They're just bouncing job to job, in which case you have a hiring problem. So then it goes back to, okay, if you've hired well, what is leadership? And I have a very strong thesis that we all have something great inside us. And the question of this lifetime is, are you going to get it out or not? So if you as a leader view your job to create the conditions where the people on your team can do the great thing which they're capable, that kind of opens up a world of higher possibilities.
Your business's success depends on relationships with customers, relationships with employees, and relationships with stakeholders. What do they all have in common? They're all human. Because no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Welcome to the Human Connection Podcast. I'm your host, Carl Ponto. Each week, I'll bring you stories, insights, and practical advice from experts that you can apply to your growing company and daily life. This week, I'm excited to connect with Stephen Puri. Stephen is an innovative entrepreneur and seasoned film executive who bridges the gap between diverse work environments and evolving needs of remote workers. As the founder of the Suka company, he is dedicated to enhancing focus and productivity through a holistic approach that emphasizes well-being and work fitness. Drawing on extensive experience from his tenure at major studios, including DreamWorks, 20th Century Fox, and Sony, he has successfully navigated the complexities of various business landscapes, raising $21 million in venture funding across multiple tech startups, culminating in one successful exit. His academic background with a BA in journalism and business administration from the University of Southern California and ongoing studies in tech leadership at Stanford University further complements his commitment to fostering healthier work environments. Congrats on fostering healthier work environments and welcome to the Human Connection Podcast.
Someone did the research. I was like, oh yeah, okay, journalism, yeah, film. For those listening at home or in the car, wherever you are, glad you're here. Probably the most fun part of today's episode is I'm one of the few people you'll meet who's been a senior executive on 2 film studio lots and also raised a bunch of venture and done startups. And Carl and I were talking about what insights do I have into that human connection thing that would be interesting to share today in a concise way. So let's do it.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on the show because I think one of the things that you mentioned is flow states a lot in your work. And
yes,
I think it is really important for productivity and just for people's feeling like they're connected with the work to be able to find those flow states and actually have that period of uninterrupted productivity. It's good for the business, it's good for the employees. And so I think it interestingly meshes well with your kind of advocacy for building remote teams and leading remote teams effectively because there's this disconnect between, or kind of a myth that people have to be in an office to be productive or to have that team culture, when it seems like, and kind of what we were discussing before we started recording was that if you can help people achieve that flow state remotely, then they'll feel that connection to the work and the team because of they're having an actual impact. And it's less about being in the same office than people actually think. Please expand on that.
Let's dig into that, because if we think about what are the moments in our lives where we feel deeply proud to be part of a team, deeply connected to a team, I would posit that being in a Slack conversation and slacking back and forth, or I returned all the emails you sent me today, is not a deep connection. In some ways, almost having all those Slack messages and Teams messages and emails is an annoyance. I'm like, Carl, stop emailing me, buddy. I'm busy, right? But I would say that when we're in a staff meeting and you walk in, you go, actually, yesterday I had some time to think. And I was thinking about if we did this, and everyone kind of turns their heads and goes, shit, if we did what Carl said, that actually changes the trajectory of our company. That is a meaningful thought, and it brings you together because then you're excited to work on it. Oh, Carl, you know what? One of my designers could jump on that, oh, I've got a free developer who could prototype that really quick. And it brings you together in a much more robust human way than, hey man, I returned your Slacks yesterday. And if we dig into that, then how did Carl, the hypothetical Carl for this example, how did Carl yesterday come up with that idea? And, when you read Hal Newport has written some great stuff on deep work versus shallow work, what is the 18 minutes between Zooms, we return emails, that kind of shallow stuff. You could be stapling papers for all that matters. And when is the deep work? When you look up after an hour or two and you go, I should share this. Like what I just went deep on, like my team should know, right? And for better or worse, like it could be they expand on and change it, or they just love it the way it is. But that sense of deep work. So a lot of what I'm passionate about is how do you create the conditions in a team that you can do that meaningful work, you know? And this is obviously built on a body of research by really smart people who came before us. And you mentioned flow states. I find flow states to be a magical component of this, where there's now a lot of science to support the magic. If you'd like, I can kind of set the table on flow states.
The quick synopsis, because some people might not be aware of the term and what it means.
Okay. So to get everyone on equal footing, because I know some people are in their cars nodding like, I'm a flow master. Others are like, I've heard of it. I know it's cool in the zeitgeist, right? So Hungarian-American psychologist, this guy Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, he had a thesis. He's like, these high performers in different disciplines, athletes, artists, scientists, inventors, they seem to go into these concentrated states where they do the work that makes them famous, that changes the world around them. And they describe it in very similar ways. What's up with that, right? So, you know, like Prometheus, he wanted to go up to Mount Olympus, grab some fire, bring it down for the rest of us. This is how we make fire, guys, right? And when he was done with his research, he wrote the book, Flow, the seminal work on this, from whence we get the term flow state. And he basically said this. He said, I chose this word, this metaphor, because it was the most beautiful way I could express the idea that we're all on the water, paddling ourselves forward. But if we align our boats with the current, the river carries us forward. It magnifies our efforts. We go further and faster. He said that's what these high performers do. They understand how to get themselves in this place of high performance. And he said, now that I've studied a lot of people, there are different words people use for it. Like Michael Jordan has that famous quote about, when I'm in the zone, it's me and the ball. You know, the focus comes down to, I will win if I simply control this ball. Like there are no defenders, there's no scoreboard, there's no stands. This is actually what matters. And, you know, did the things that 30 years later are still on highlight reels, right? And I think there's another great Picasso quote about when he was working on Guernica. He's like, I was up all night. I forgot to eat. I didn't go pee, but hey, Guernica's taking shape. What do you think? You know? And that's what Mihai wrote about, is there conditions for yourself or for your team that you can create so that people are more capable of getting into these deep states for an hour or two and doing work that, you know, Carl walks on the staff meeting and goes, hey guys, what about this? Everyone's like, that's cool. We should do that.
And I think one of the key things that leaders need to understand is that the conditions that your team members need to be in to reach that flow state is not all the same for each person. And so
True.
if you start giving them the flexibility to and the autonomy to achieve the situation, like the settings or the conditions to get them in that flow state more often, is going to be better for everyone, better for them, better for the company, better for your team culture, because that sort of scenario or that sort of environment is going to help build that connection to the work, to each other, and it's also going to make it so the business gets a lot more value from each of their team members. Whereas you're trying to kind of micromanage the way people work, or you're getting them in a bunch of disruptive meetings, or just like I said, having them focusing on these, or kind of having to deal with emails or Slack all the time that don't really move the needle for it and don't provide that experience, then it doesn't matter if they're in an office or at home, you're not getting the most from them and they're not getting the most from the experience, and either they're going to leave or they're basically just going to languish in mediocrity, and that's not good for anyone.
And the thing you're touching upon, I'm going to restate it in a different way, which is, it's how do you define leadership? Because you said in that last paragraph about micromanaging and like that sense of like, how closely are you watching people to do things? And as you know, like with remote work, there is definitely a level of fear among managers where that could be expressed as, I can't see you, so I don't know what you're doing, right? Are you at the park with your dog? Are you napping? Are you doing laundry? Or are you moving our company forward? And I think a lot of that goes away when you consider that a lot of that is hiring problems. Like if you don't hire people who are aligned with the mission of the company and the values of the company, like how you treat each other, how you treat customers, how you treat your competitors. Like if you hire well, people are deeply engaged with the mission and they respect the values of the company because it aligns with their own values, right? If you do that, a lot of those kind of fears are unfounded. But if you hire someone who's indeed, surfing and has had 5 jobs in 6 years, yeah, you're probably not finding someone who connects with companies a lot. They're just bouncing job to job, in which case you have a hiring problem. So then it goes back to, okay, if you've hired well, what is leadership? And I have a very strong thesis that we all have something great inside us. And the question of this lifetime is, are you going to get it out or not? So if you as a leader view your job to create the conditions where the people on your team can do the great thing of which they're capable, that kind of opens up a world of like higher possibilities than did they turn in their TPS reports by 3 p.m. on Friday because they're really due at 3 p.m. on Friday. I need to have them at 3 p.m. on Friday. You know what I mean? It expands your team a lot. So you also brought up this idea of, okay, so suppose you have a team that you've assembled and you've hopefully hired well, and maybe you do define the leadership as giving your team the ability to do what they're great at. You brought up the fact that that is a personal thing. It varies. Like, yes, there are some things, there's a lot of research, what the sweet spot is for most people. I will use music as an example. The sweet spot in most research to like drop into a flow state, which takes like 15 to 20 minutes to sort of like get to that place where you're super focused, right? Music generally helps a lot, is music that's 60 to 90 beats per minute. There are certain key signatures seem more helpful. It's ambient, non-vocal music, so you're not really singing along with that sort of thing, right? Like, the app I created, you have like 1,000 hours of original music, all sort of written to this. But there's always someone who pops up each day going, oh, I actually really listened to this other thing. Like, I need to listen to 90s gangster rap or Tchaikovsky, or whatever that may be. So there are outliers, but that's one of those things you can provide to say, hey, you know what? We have, this provided for you if this helps you fall into flow. And also there's a sense of like, as you get to know people, if you and your team say, let's have an hour or 2 hours a day where we agree that's our flow time, that's our focus time, it's our deep work time. We do that meaningful thing for the staff meeting, right? You sort of need to agree upon when that is, because if that's when you're like, hey, let's not slack each other every 5 minutes. Let's not set meetings or Zooms or client meetings in that time. Let's just say 9 to 10 every morning, or 11 to 12, whatever that is. You need to understand people have different chronotypes. And chronotype is the concept that, there are certain times of day you're more adept at doing other things than other things, right? And I'll close with one example. The first time I encountered that, I actually didn't know the term chronotype, but when I was in film, there's a very famous screenwriter, Ron Bass, who wrote My Best Friend's Wedding and Rain Man, like all this stuff, right? And he famously or infamously would not talk to his family in the morning. He would get up and he's like, I'm not the dad who's going to be like, hey, who wants pancakes? And, you need a ride to school? It's like, when I talk to you, I can no longer hear my characters' voices. And, that's what he got $1 million, $2 million a script to do, is write those voices, those words that would get a Julia Roberts or a Tom Cruise to say yes, right? And his family is eventually okay with that, because they're like, okay, Dad, like that 5, 6 a.m. until 9 a.m. in the morning is your sacred time to write dialogue. You go do it. And then in the afternoon, he was like, oh, I can do collaborative work then. So he would do like studio meetings with other writers, things like that in the afternoon. So as you as a leader, hopefully become educated the way you said, which is you have to know people are slightly different. You start to get to know people's chronotypes. So if you decide as a team to try flow time, choose at a time when people can do that. Because like after lunch, people might be sleepy or something. Anyway, back to you, Carl.
Yeah, there's a great book called When. I can't remember the subtitle to it, but it's all about how to plan out your day and understand when you should be do certain activities during the course of the day. Like for me, it's left brain things in the morning, but right after lunch, if I try and do emails or something where it requires a lot of thinking, I'm a zombie, and I will stare at the screen with like a blinking cursor and be like, I don't know what I'm thinking about for the last 10 minutes. And so I'll do more creative stuff or things that require right brain thinking, because my self-filtering kind of processes in the brain are too tired to work, so I have better ideas then. But then in the evening, I'll do more left brain thinking again. But understanding that, understanding your team's propensities for different types of work at different times during the day, especially if they're remote or working in different, even to different offices and different time zones, can be super valuable as a leader, because then you're able to accommodate them and make sure that they're working in the way that is most conducive for them, and then which is then going to be more conducive for your clients and your business, because then they're able to get in those flow states more consistently.
Yeah.
And then, as a leader, that's what you want them to be in, because the more they're doing that, then the better work they're doing. And
can I interject on that? When you say the better work they're doing, implicit in that is how you define work. And I think it's more interesting and impactful to define work as the effect of your actions, as opposed to how long they took you or where you did them, what time of day. You know, it is that thing of, like I was joking at the beginning, it's the effect of Carl saying, I was thinking about this feature and I kind of illustrated it. What do you think? That everyone goes, oh, wow, we should work on that. I honestly don't care if you thought about that for 15 minutes at the beach yesterday with your dog. If our company takes off because you had that idea, how have you created it for yourself? As opposed to, Carl, if you're not under the same fluorescent lights with me for 8 or 10 hours a day, I really don't know that you're working.
Yeah, I think there's so much focus on the task or the time people spend on a thing, rather than the impact that work has on the results that the company cares about, or that the team cares about, and the clients care about. So it's, and so if you're tracking or considering people working based on what chair their butt's in and where that chair happens to be located, then you're missing the point of what actually delivers the results that your company cares about. And it's certainly these days not about how much time you spend on something, because there's so many ways to get a lot of the rote work out of the way, or kind of automate it, or just not have to do it anymore because some other tool is taking care of it. So but if people are able to, like you said, come up with a brilliant idea, some innovation or aha moment or like idea for a campaign that gets the big results, then you're not paying them for the hours or the minutes that they spent for it, but by the impact it had. And I think there's still this, like you said, there's this misnomer or kind of myth that it's about paying people by the hour for their work and not paying for the results they can generate, no matter how long it takes them. Because that's really what matters with what the business cares about.
That is the truth. And, you know, I know you talk a lot about the H to H connection. I'll tell you one of the things that I learned about the H to H thing. When we were working on an early version of Suka, you know, the flow state app that I make, I was talking to someone and I said, you know what? I know so many members, almost like I'm the hub and they're the spokes, but they don't have any sense of each other. Like there's no sense of a team of people all trying to do something. And it was one of the things that I loved back in film. Even though I wasn't a writer, there was a coffee shop, a Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf that's across from the Directors Guild on Sunset, that's known as like a writer's clubhouse. I would go there to read scripts because, you know, as an executive, you have to read a ton of incoming material, right? So I would go there to read just because the energy of being around other people trying to do something great is infectious. So I was talking to a couple members saying like, hey, we have this flow state app with, you know, music and help you stay off your phone, your distraction, all that. I was like, what do you think if people could get a sense there are other people there? Maybe there's a group chat, maybe there's like something you can share what you're working on and ask for help or whatever. And there was one woman who said this to me, and I didn't need to have any other conversation after this. She just said it so clearly. I was like, oh my God, you're right. The value of humans. Where she said, Stephen, you know, stop pitching this idea. Let me be very clear with you. I can go to the Nike store. I can buy a pair of shoes. They'll send me a left shoe and a right shoe. I put them on my feet. I run. Works great. But there are over 100 million people in the Nike Run Club, because when you run together, you run further, you run faster, and you're more accountable. And the days when you're on the sofa and you're kind of like, you suck, your friends come by and pick you up and you run and then you feel great. You're like, I'm glad we did this. And the days that you were there for your friend who's having the sofa moment, those feel even better when you're the one who lifts up, your teammates. She said, I absolutely think you should do it. And that really reinforced it for me that even though we talk a lot about flow and focus as a very solitary activity, there is something human about wanting to be around other people who are deeply engaged in that. Whether like in college, did you ever go to study hall? Yeah, me too. And it wasn't a social hour. You didn't go table to table and like talk to everyone, but you were there and everyone was studying for finals and you're all in it. Like, who has the econ final tomorrow? And I loved that. I love that sense of like the energy of doing something with other people.
Yeah, and I think with those sort of tools, you can do that with them without even being in the same room. So you can still have that kind of remote connection, but just by the shared experience through the technology, you can still have that actual shared experience because it's a synchronized event.
The sense of presence.
So I think it shows a real value of an understanding of what people are looking for in their work that can be done with kind of location agnostic workflows in mind. So
location agnostic workflows. That sounds very heady. I'm going to use that one.
That one's for free.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for connecting with me today, Stephen. If you enjoyed this episode of the Human Connection Podcast, please leave a review and share it. If you'd like to connect with myself or Stephen, check out the links in the show notes. And remember, no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Happy connecting.